Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review Silver Bullet. Part human, part wolf, total terror.
Directed by Daniel Attias, starring Gary Busey, Everett McGill, Corey Haim, and Megan Follows. Loosely based on Stephen King's novella Cycle of the Werewolf, this movie's about a town that's attacked by a werewolf. Marty, the main lead, whose best friend becomes one of the werewolf's victims. And now has to rally his sister and uncle to hunt and kill a werewolf.
We'll catch him. You couldn't catch a cold.
This is a Patreon Bloodbath Baller Club, the BBC recommendation from Mitch Reeves, a longtime supporter of the channel. And long before that, I think he was one of our first subscribers, probably within the first 1,000, 6 years ago. A great supporter of a lot of different horror channels, and I'm happy to call him a friend. Mitch Reeves knows that we don't really review that many werewolf movies. And so he's like, yeah, you're doing this one, so get sauced. And I did. This is also a retrospective review, so there is going to be spoilers. There's a new Scream Factory release. If you want to watch it, check it out. Otherwise, we're going to spoil everything. So what do we like?
I enjoyed the mystery of this film because as it started off, it's not until about 40 or 50 minutes in that you really know who the werewolf is.
At least 100%. We have hunches.
We just assumed it was going to be Gary Busey right off the bat because, I mean, why not? Who better than the wild man himself?
I wish it was.
Piss on the Yankees, piss on the Indians, piss on the Phillies, piss on the piss on.
We didn't know what exactly we were getting into because at the time, you would assume that the werewolf costume is more man than wolf. That's another aspect I was pretty impressed with, was this was a pretty good looking werewolf costume.
And like most werewolf movies, you don't see the suit that often, but I think that you see it a little bit more in this one than many others, because they do try and focus on some of the transformations, and at the end you see like the reverse transformation, which was actually really well done. But it did look kind of goofy when it showed like the head trying to morph from like human to wolf and vice versa. But it was still better than a lot of other werewolves. And I liked that the movie started off with like a clean, practical head rip.
We had a really cool setup with like the forest and the fog, because you didn't know when or where the werewolf was going to attack.
It's under the fog.
When he just starts attacking the people, you establish that this werewolf is conscious of what they're doing. And that to me is a cool aspect to any werewolf movie. In this one, he gets the peacemaker bat, and you just see that transition of him getting hit to grabbing the bat and smacking the bartender. And I like when the werewolf acts as a human, but just a monster form, because then you hate him. And you want to see the people beat the werewolf. You're rooting for Marty. You're rooting for Red. You're like, yeah, go get this werewolf because he's actually a bad guy, not just some poor sap who's cursed.
Going back to that scene with like the mist and everything, I thought that was cool because it doesn't necessarily show all types of blood and guts, and it doesn't have to. And the whole kind of like setup really reminded me of Hatchet, and I would bet that Adam Green drew inspiration from this specific scene. It seemed so similar that I can't imagine that Adam Green didn't take inspiration. Also, some inspiration that we think might have been in here is from Trey Parker and Matt Stone while creating the Timmy character from South Park. As Marty is a little crippled boy in a wheelchair, and he's talking with Tammy, and all of a sudden her dad yells, "Tammy! Timmy!" I did like Corey Haim though. I definitely did like Corey Haim as Marty. I think he did a really great job without using his legs. It's really, really well done. However, there was that one scene where he was forced to climb a tree to get his kite because his buddy's a fucking asshole, but he did it.
Marty, are you all right? Well, except for my legs. I don't think I could walk.
But if we're gonna talk about Marty, we have to talk about his wheels. Man, did he have the coolest wheelchair? I don't even think I would classify this as a wheelchair. This is literally a motorcycle. I've driven on the street in a golf cart and have been pulled over, and they said this is not street legal. Can you only imagine a like 12-year-old boy whipping in this thing?
Yeah, that thing was awesome. And I like that it was named the Silver Bullet.
You want a silver bullet, huh? Huh?
Everett McGill, who plays the Reverend and the werewolf, is definitely a great villain in this movie. Once he gets the eye patch on, you know he's a bad guy, and he is just intimidating. He's a douche. You clearly are gonna tremble when you see him, just like Jane did when she was like going to drop off those cans.
Having some trouble.
And he looks the part.
It really reminded me of like a James Bond villain or someone from Kill Bill or the movies that Kill Bill is referencing, obviously from the 70s. Like he just seems so villainous. I liked everybody's reactions.
Has anybody in here seen my son, Brady?
Especially when that guy finds his like dead son in the gazebo.
We haven't talked a lot about this in this movie, but Gary Busey, I loved his character. He is the coolest uncle ever. Sure, you know, he may have his problems with like being an alcoholic and constantly divorcing women.
You know, I don't get you.
I know you don't.
But he knows what matters most, the love of his niece and nephew and taking care of them. But he's also just wild.
You're gonna have 4th of July, but you're gonna have it in September.
I liked how evident it was that he was ad-libbing his lines. I wouldn't put it past him to do that in everything he's been in. There's a number of interviews where he's just absolutely crazy, and you just never know what you're gonna get.
But this new Amazon Fire TV listens to me and does exactly what I say.
The first time I noticed that he was like ad-libbing was when he's at the table with the family. He was like, he accidentally knocked over a drink.
Bob, so long with that. Okay.
And he's just like cool as a cucumber. And thankfully everybody else was able to kind of go along with him. And it made it really natural, surprisingly. Now, what didn't we like?
I thought the monologue or the voiceover, the narration was pointless. There was no real reason for it.
You see, Arnie Westrom was a chronic drunk, and what happened seemed like an accident.
It's loosely based off of a Stephen King novella, which it kind of gives it that feel, but you didn't need it. She's just telling it as a before and after.
I didn't care that it was Jane necessarily doing it, but it was too spaced out that it was just like shocking when it all of a sudden happened.
Yeah, Jane's walking around in all these new clothes showing off her tits, acting like nobody ever had tits before her.
I don't like how Marty didn't realize he already had a really badass wheelchair.
Hey, it's Madman Marty and the Silver Bullets.
And the fact that his uncle was making him a new one, I'm like, why the fuck would you want a new one? Look at how cool this is. I mean, obviously my mind had changed once I saw the new one.
Ta-da!
That was actually just a motorcycle. But prior to that, Marty was an idiot.
I didn't like the Princess Bride feel of this movie. The music and just the like loving nature. It's very odd when watching a werewolf shred people apart.
I wasn't always able to say that, but I can say it now. I love you too, Marty.
It was very wholesome, especially when after Brad's being a fucking asshole and terrorizing Jane with the snake and ruining her hose.
Look at my hose!
Marty gives her some money to buy some new hose, and they're just being really nice to each other. I was like, wow, this is so wholesome. What the hell is this?
Here.
It is certainly an odd pairing of like family adventure and a werewolf that tears people to shreds. Although, despite a couple kills that looked really great, I wish there were more werewolf kills. Like the kill with the girl taking too many pills, there was like a bunch of cool slices in her skin and a lot of great shots for a werewolf kill. And I wanted more of that.
Marty made some smart decisions, but also made some dumb decisions. Like when you're going off-roading into a no exit zone.
Like the bridge?
The bridge. Like that is probably the worst possible place he could have went because A, he knew he was out of fuel because it kept showing how he was like almost on empty. If you know you're gonna go somewhere where you can't get out of and no one's gonna be there, why would you go there? You're pretty much SOL. Oh, conveniently a farmer's driving his tractor through the woods. He's got supersonic hearing. Have you ever been on a tractor?
Mr. Zimmerman! Help me! Please!
And like realistically, if the Reverend's gonna kill a kid in broad daylight on like with his car, what's one farmer walking over in the shed gonna do?
spooky in here, isn't it?
Now it's time for our final thoughts and ratings. Silver Bullet was an enjoyable time. It was a cheesy werewolf movie, surprisingly based on a Stephen King story that starred Gary Busey and Corey Haim. It's a throwback to the times where the reactions were just gold. We had full-bodied werewolves that looked passable and very predictable killers. The fact that Marty had this beast of a whip that is featured prominently in all art that we saw of this movie makes sense because it's so cool. The production value and everything was pretty solid. The stunts performed by Gary Busey himself, very cool. I do think that there should have been more kills, and it was a little bit too family oriented, but it's still worth a watch. So I'm gonna give this 2.5 crazy Oregon werewolves out of 5.
I was pleasantly surprised after watching this movie. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. There was some moments that I was just kind of like, I don't really enjoy what I'm seeing. But throughout most of the film, the storytelling was really good. I enjoyed the mystery aspect of it. I liked the werewolf. They did some really good extreme close-up shots on just the eyes and the reactions, not giving too much away until the very end.
Do you mean of every guy when they tried to figure out who the werewolf was?
That is the worst. The facial reactions of discovering the werewolf, probably the worst part of this movie. No, second worst part of this movie. The worst part of this movie is the wholesome, I love you brother and sister moment. That just didn't need to be in here. But other than that, you did get some cool kills and some likable characters, and it's a fun time. So with that being said, I give this film 3.5 Peacemakers out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, there's a brand new Scream Factory release. And if you want to be part of the BBC, the Bloodbath Baller Club, check out the Patreon rewards in the description. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay updated with everything Bloodbath and beyond.